Good morning, Brett.
Brett, good morning. How are you?
I'm very well. It's great to talk to you. You've been filming in the wilds of southern Africa for over 3 decades, and you've said that the animals are like your family. So what is it like for you to come across a rhino that's had its horn hacked off?
It's absolutely devastating. You can imagine the emotional content is extreme. We film and watch these animals go through incredible extremes just by living in the wild. And then all of a sudden, man comes along and makes it way harder. So that's the only reason that we've taken this on. We have to stop the trade in rhino horn.
What made you decide, Dereck, that it was time to start transporting the animals out of South Africa?
Brett, really the way this started for us is we've been involved with big game, big wildlife for a long time with lions and elephants, leopards and other things. And in conservation circles, more and more now, when you mention rhinos, everybody hangs their heads and says, it's desperate. And Beverly and I don't do despair very well. And so we said, look, it's time for us to do something proactive. We could make this a story of hope. And moving the first 100 rhinos out of the higher poaching zones into other areas in the world, and particularly in Botswana, which is the lowest poaching zone in Africa, just seemed to make sense for us.
What is it about Botswana that makes it safer for rhinos?
First of all, there's political will. So from the president and the Minister of Environment down, these are people that are very interested in rhino conservation and have been for a long, long time. We have a very low human population, only 2 million people in a country the size of Texas or France. So we have these huge wildlife areas, but probably one of the most important factors, 2 important factors really, is we have very, very low corruption rates. And it's often been said that to move a rhino horn, you need 1 corrupt official. And then the other is we have in Botswana, we have a shoot to kill policy. If there's an engagement with poachers, there's no holding back.
What about the risk to you in South Africa? I mean, this is a very lucrative industry that you are interfering with. Do poachers have you in their sights?
They have in the past, and certainly we've got messages. We were working with the military some years ago and hanging out of helicopters and filming. We'd go into town and we'd get messages saying, look, we know who you are and we'll come and burn your camp down and kill you. But I don't think you can live with that sort of fear. You've got to push forward and you've got to understand that this is the right thing to do.
So let's talk about the rhinos that you select to be transported. How do you decide which ones you're going to take?
Well, there are a couple of factors. You want healthy rhinos, you want relatively young rhinos. You want rhinos, if it's females, that are not in late stages of pregnancy, because then there's a risk to moving them. And in essence, you want a ratio of males to females of about 1 male to 4 females.
How much does it cost to move a rhino?
It costs about $45,000 US to move 1 rhino. And that is obviously the darting process, keeping them in bomas to make sure that they're going to be healthy, and then the transport. And the most secure way to transport them is to fly them. And obviously that's where a huge amount of the expense comes in. And then, of course, getting them on the ground in Botswana. If they're white rhinos, we might be able to do what they call a hot release. But if they're black rhinos, we will once again have to keep them in a captive situation, in a boma, feed them up, and then after a couple of weeks, we'll be able to release them.
So it's not simply a matter of grabbing the rhino, flying it into Botswana, and dropping it on the ground.
Oh, Brett, I wish it was. There are a lot of logistics involved, and there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of people. But one of the big things about flying them, which has just increased the workload of this project, is that with rhino horn being at $65,000 US a kilo, there's a huge risk factor in moving 100 rhinos by road, for example. So we've got security around this. We've got all sorts of things going on, and we just want to move these rhinos as quickly as possible, and they'll be released in secret locations, for security.
Now, you do have military support for security, but how has the South African government responded to what you're doing? Is it legal to take animals out of South Africa?
Very definitely. This is a high-level negotiation and agreement between 2 countries. The South African government has agreed and actually put into place many, many years ago the conservation strategy of moving rhinos and distributing these rhinos. And it makes a lot of sense. You don't want to keep all your wealth in any asset, whatever it is, gold bars or money, in one location. And in this case, it's rhinos. And so for many years, the South African government has been distributing these rhinos, not because they're high-value assets only, but also to spread the DNA for future, to prevent against future collapse. And it has to be said here, Brett, that really and truly, without the good conservation methods of the South African government up to now, this continent wouldn't have any rhinos at all.
When you look at this on a philosophical level, you've made it your business to avoid interfering or intervening in the lives of animals when you've been photographing them in the wild. Why is this different? Why should this exception be allowed?
We absolutely have, and it's very important early on in our careers as filmmakers that we would not intervene, we would not interfere when it was a natural situation happening in front of us. But if man had anything to do with it, so for instance, a snare, a bullet wound in an animal, then we would intervene. And that's really why we're taking action right now. What we're seeing is man is exterminating the rhinos in southern Africa. And if we don't take action now, we will be part of the people that are just saying, well, you know, c'est la vie, there's nothing more we can do. And we really can't do that. It needs to be a story of hope. We might fail, but if we don't try, we definitely will never know.